I cannot believe this story, and I don't think it's going to the extreme.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Does Utah reascend to the top of their conference? Maybe not quite, though. And one of the craziest quarterback stories ever continues to be a saga. But here's a new quarterback saga that I didn't have on my bingo card this year. According to On3 Sports and others, Tennessee starting quarterback Nico Iamaleava are in active contract negotiations ahead of the 2025 season, Pete Nakos reports. On3 tweets out, it is unclear if the negotiations will impact whether he enters the spring transfer portal. Okay, let's start right there. I fully understand why On3 is asking that question, because if you're in a negotiation from Nico's camp, if you're looking at it from that side of things, the carrot and the stick, you got to have a stick, right? There has to be a give us this or, right? There has to be. Nico would be foolish, very, very foolish to leave Tennessee. Now, is this just a leverage play to get more money out of the Vols NIL collective? Perhaps. What I recall hearing and being told was that his NIL deal over the course of his entire college career is somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 million. Somewhere in the that's not an exact number. That was an approximation at the time. He might look at a place like Duke, who's giving their quarterback $4 million a year, and say, no, I think I'm better than that guy over there. Darian Mensah hasn't even played a snap in the ACC at Duke. That's a basketball school. Why is he getting more than me? That could be the angle he's coming from, trying to drive up his own value. And you know what? He'd have an argument there. Financially, with what other quarterbacks getting in the market, sure, maybe he could be worth a little bit more. From the Tennessee side of things, you might come back and say, hey, didn't you have like 6 games last year where you're under 200 yards passing? How about before you do that, you go out and prove a little more, and then we'll get you some more. But that can create some negative sentiments between those two sides. And maybe the angle of all transfer out, which is not something that's been reported yet, speculated. It's just been speculated about right now. Maybe they'd be serious on that front. But that would be a really foolish decision. Number one, you are at a program that has maximum investment in football. You've got a great fan base. You have got a head coach who is a quarterback guy. You have got like nothing about Tennessee, from my vantage point, screams anything except we want to be good at football and we want you to succeed. They just had a season in which they went to the playoff and Nico didn't even have to be great. You know what a luxury that is as a quarterback? I don't care if you're in college, high school, or the NFL. I can be okay. I can be average. I can not play the best football I'll ever play in my career, and we'll go to the playoff. Okay, you'd be foolish to leave that sort of program, because how many programs that can give you that are seeking a quarterback? How many? I don't think that's a very long list. I don't know if that list has anybody on it. So that's the first reason. Second reason, his head coach is an offensive quarterback guy who is all in on, last year they were big on running the football. Historically, though, they have had a quarterback-centric offense. Their identity changed a little bit. I described them last year as the Kansas City Chiefs, where we all came to know them in their ascension as one thing, with this quarterback doing a bunch of crazy, awesome stuff with big explosive plays. In reality, this past year, they're a defense and run game sort of squad. And that's what Tennessee was. That's what the Chiefs were. But so the versatility of your head coach, who is an offensive guy, to give you whatever you need to succeed, but to adapt to whatever team he's able to put together to go out and win games in the SEC with you at quarterback where you've been for the last couple of years. Yeah, that's not something everybody just has. It's not something you stumble into as a college quarterback. So reason number 3, and this will be the last one, that I think Nico would be foolish to leave, is which national championship program are you going to? Is there actually, I don't know. Again, as I stated at the beginning of this segment, I believe the question was posed to gauge interest and intrigue on social media and whatnot, asking the question. It's not clear whether, like just saying it's not clear whether he would use it as leverage to enter the spring transfer portal window. That's not reporting anything. It's just, well, that's not clear. But we were thinking about it. Now you're thinking about it too. And I'm talking about it. And I'm thinking about it. I don't know that Nico is seriously considering that. I don't believe, as a matter of fact, that he is. That is not where my head is at. That is not where the information that I have is at. Can situations change? Yes. It would be one of the craziest things I have ever seen to see Nico go from, I just got Tennessee to the playoff, and I'm poised to potentially be a Heisman finalist this year if I take a step forward, and I'm at a program that wants to surround me with all the resources possible, that if we maximize our potential here, can go compete for a national championship in the SEC, playing in front of one of the best home stadium advantages in all of college football, to, no, I want to leave because I don't have enough money. And for anyone out there that wonders why coaches have pushed back on NIL from time to time, this would be the epitome of why. You think this is what Josh Heupel wants to be dealing with right now? At all. However involved he is. Even if it's mostly between Nico and the NIL collective. You think Josh Heupel's just cut out of the loop? You think he's just not involved whatsoever? No, he's definitely not. And so this is why coaches don't want to have players who can go out and make these sorts of demands in the middle of spring ball. You just throw in this curveball into things. Hey, I need a new contract. You think NFL coaches enjoy when players hold out? You think GMs like it? No, of course not. But that's what you've got now. That's the system that's been created here, because that arrangement, I would think, is between Nico and the NIL collective. Not Nico and the University of Tennessee. Now, that might change slightly when the revenue sharing aspect of this comes down. But I just see way too many reasons to think what was being suggested or possibly suggested, not reported, again, just kind of suggested or put it out there, that Nico would transfer to where? Where is he go? By the way, I just thought of another reason why you wouldn't leave. Who's giving you more money? You have, in theory, the leverage here with Tennessee. If you're seeking a new home come next Wednesday when the transfer portal opens, who's giving you more money? Who's got the leverage in that situation? Everybody has a plan at quarterback right now. They might want you, but they might not necessarily need you to come in at quarterback. So I cannot believe that this is where we're at on the one hand. And on the other hand, you know what? It's college football. Why wouldn't we be here? This was kind of inevitable at some point that you have players start holding, and I think that's unfortunate. I don't know that he's holding out of a practice. I haven't seen that reported anywhere. But again, if they're trying to renegotiate the contract, they're clearly not happy with something, and there's got to be a way. If they feel like they could get it to a contract negotiation standpoint, there's some kind of leverage they're going to push on to Tennessee, that they're going to lean on and say, if you don't do this, then we're going to do this. I mean, it's a logical thought to pose the question, hey, maybe we'll just transfer out. I'm sure he'd find somewhere, but which school? He's not going to Florida. He's not going to Auburn. He's not going to Alabama. He's not going to Georgia. Just keep going down the list of teams that you feel, or programs that you feel, can give him a legitimate national championship caliber infrastructure. It's not a very big list. I don't even know if there's a single team on it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All that good stuff. Let's go from the SEC to the Big 12, because Utah was supposed to come in and run the conference, and then Cam Rising got hurt. But they fixed that, right? First, this episode brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. TurboTax.com. Is Utah ready to get back on top? JT Wistrcill of Locked On Utes is here to discuss that fact. Yeah, he's shaking his head. Yeah, JT's all about it. Yeah, Utah's back to the conference championship picture. You know, something they haven't had in 3 years now, JT, by the time 2025 rolls around, is stability and certainty at quarterback. I am knocking on wood. Hear me? Right here. Utah fans, when that voodoo water makes its way to Devin Dampier somehow, don't come blaming me. Just don't do it. I don't want to hear it. But that's got to be the biggest reason for optimism for the Utes is you know who the quarterback's going to be, what he's able to give you, at least relative to what you've had the last couple of years.
If nothing else, Devin Dampier will make the quarterback position fun in Salt Lake City again. And that is something that we have desperately missed over the last couple of years. He's a special talent. He's the only player in the country last year who ran for over 1,000 and threw for over 2,500 yards. That's what's making the jump from group of 5 to P4. And it feels like he is ready. I think a lot of people expect him to be really good. And if you look at how he did against those P4 teams last year, it was impressive. They struggled to bring him down too. He got sacked less than 5 times last year. He's an incredibly elusive player, and he's already turning heads in spring ball. He's made a number of plays already in the media viewing portions that we've heard reported on so far. He's been able to make plays downfield, bought time for his teammates too, and he led the country in yards per carry last year, like over all running backs. That's just how elusive he was at that level. So this is a guy who's absolutely ready to make the leap up too. And you've heard the different energy that there's been around practice, and part of that is having a guy at quarterback with the dynamic abilities that Devin Dampier has, a guy that has already been a leader, gaining the confidence of his teammates too, knows this system well because Jason Beck, his offensive coordinator, came from New Mexico and is now Utah's offensive coordinator too. So it's incredibly exciting what Utah's putting together, and Devin Dampier will be the biggest difference between this Utah team and last year. They lost so many games due to bad quarterback play. Dampier, and there's a chance he threw 12 interceptions last year. He might turn over a little bit, but he's going to be able to make some plays and do some big things. And I'm expecting the Utah to bounce back in a big way because they have Devin Dampier under center.
I think that's the only question that you have, which I think is a welcome one for Utah fans, which is, hey, does this guy replicate his style? You know, Cam Ward had, I think, similar questions when he transferred to Washington State originally from Incarnate Word. You know, I remember talking about that at the time and wondering, hey, is he going to be able to make the adjustment that he's no longer able to fit it into that tight window? He's not able to outrun every defensive. Like you're making a leap forward here. Certainly from the Mountain West to the Big 12, there is a gap. There is a gap. No matter what random YouTube comments will tell me out there, there is a gap. And so I think that's kind of the biggest question for this Utah offense from my vantage point is how does he make that jump? But here's why Utah should be optimistic on that front. I think this is an interesting match. It gives me a few kind of Jalen Milroe with Kalen DeBoer vibes where, hey, this is a different style of quarterback to what the head coach is used to working with. Cam Rising sat in the pocket. Tyler Huntley sat in the pocket, made plays. They could move, but they weren't runners. Dampier's a runner. And the great quarterbacks for Kalen DeBoer leading up to his time at Alabama were Jake Haener, Michael Penix. They sat in the pocket, they sliced and diced. And at first, it worked. And then it wasn't working as well by the end of the season. And Alabama, I think, feels that they could actually be in a better position at quarterback this year with Ty Simpson likely to win that starting job. How do you see that dynamic playing out for Utah?
Well, first of all, I need to correct. I was smiling and nodding when you said Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe together. The reason I was smiling and nodding, because I know it was a disappointment to your Alabama fans who listen to this, but being a team that just misses out on the college football playoff, if Utah could achieve that next year, that would be fantastic, awesome, amazing. Be a top 15 team in the country. I would love that. And if they're a top 15 in the country, they might have gone on to maybe just lose in the Big 12 championship, still have a chance to get in, although highly unlikely based on how everything plays out. Anyways, back to your question. Yeah, the biggest thing is going to be is Kyle Whittingham, like willing to finally change his style and let Devin Dampier be Devin Dampier, because Utah's had quarterbacks in the past where Dampier he's better with his legs than he is his arm. He can make some really impressive throws, but he's better with his legs than he is his arm. So do you let him make those mistakes? Because in the end of the day, he might make some mistakes and put you in some bad spots, but a lot of times he's going to get you out of them because he is that tremendously talented. I do believe Kyle Whittingham is going to finally give a little bit this year in terms of how rigid he's been in the past of ground and pound, running the ball only. Like if we have a quarterback we don't feel confident in throwing the ball and we're worried he's going to turn it over, Kyle Whittingham has just a reaction, like a very negative and vitriol reaction every time his team turns the ball over. There are very few things he hates more than turning the ball over. But in order to lure Devin Dampier to Utah, in order to get Jason Beck to come to Utah, I do believe that there were things made in discussions that were held and had about, hey, you'll be able to do your offense and run these things too. So I do believe they will let Devin Dampier be Devin Dampier. The mix you talked about with Kalen DeBoer and the things of that nature too, they have a history of that, yes. But because of the familiarity that Jason Beck and Devin Dampier have with each other, that's why I think this will be a more positive marriage than it ended up playing out for the Crimson Tide last year. I really think that Devin Dampier is going to have a really good year for this Utah team. And you mentioned Utah contending in the Big 12. I do believe this will be a top 5 team in the conference next year.
Top 5 in the conference.
You put contend in the title. You were implying.
I did. I just you put it at top 5, and I just want, because frankly, if you're top 8 in the Big 12, you're pushing for a Big 12 championship spot, because that's the way that this beautiful conference works. That's the way that it went last year. I have no reason to expect it's going to be any different. You could tell me that, Arizona somehow bounces back. I'd say, I just watched Arizona State do it. You could tell me that, I don't know if I'd buy Colorado getting there necessarily. Like, there are a couple teams, and Arizona might not have been the perfect example, but you can tell me Baylor takes a step forward and gets there. Texas Tech could make a run. Utah could bounce back. Maybe. And one thing I also want to ask you, JT, because I haven't had the chance to ask you this question just yet. It has to be more than Devin Dampier, right?
Yes.
He has to change the quarterback position, but you have to have other guys. I want you to go to the transfer portal, which is opening next week, and oh boy, there could be some real chaos in the transfer portal. I mean, there's always chaos in there, but if you go to who Utah's brought in via the portal so far, who's one guy you highlight and say he has to be great for Utah to be an upper tier team in the Big 12?
I'll go Wayshawn Parker, their running back. They brought him from Washington State. Consensus was he was pretty much a top 3 running back transfer portal addition for this team at the running back spot. So that was a big get for them. Over 700 yards last year with the Cougars. Utah brought over his running back coach as well. So kind of the similar thing they were able to do with Dampier there. But it really feels like if he has a dominant season, and I think this Utah offensive line is spectacular. The way Spencer, I'm not sure if you've heard the way that some people in the media are talking about Spencer Fano, Utah's right tackle, coming back for another year, but there is some genuine first-round hype about him in the 2026 NFL draft. So you have a guy like that on the right side. Caleb Lomo did a really good job. You return all 5 starters back. This is getting really deep into Utah talk, but I do think the interior offensive line needs to improve in order for them to meet that mark. But Wayshawn Parker was a special player, and he was a true freshman last year. The biggest jump we often see players make are their freshman to sophomore years. And we just mentioned Spencer Fano. Spencer Fano started his freshman season at left tackle, and it did not go great. He was fine, but it's really hard to play as a true freshman in offensive line. So in and of itself, that was an accomplishment. Moves to the right side, one of the best right tackles in all of college football. So I really feel like Wayshawn Parker can be a guy too. This is a Utah team that has upgraded their receiver room. Their tight ends room seems like they got some really good players in there, can maximize. Won't say upgrade because you lose Keithy, but a lot of really encouraging things. This Utah offense took a complete overhaul in personnel, and I think they're going to be better for it, and they're going to maximize some of the pieces they had. And even though they lost some veterans, still a Utah defense. So I'm really bullish on this Utah team in 2025.
JT Wistrcill knows all things Utes. Jaden Rashada, yes, that Jaden Rashada still doesn't know where he's going to play. Could he be trying to get a team to the playoff next year? There is a part of me that cannot believe this is still an ongoing saga in college football. There's another part of me that tells that first part of me, Spencer, stop being stupid. Everything is insane nowadays. And then that first part of me goes, oh yeah, you're right. Everything is totally insane. So Jaden Rashada, was once a 5-star quarterback, borderline 5-star quarterback. You see it however you like. There is an ongoing lawsuit against Billy Napier and the University of Florida over NIL payments that were promised but never made. So he committed to Miami. He then flipped to Florida. Then the NIL situation required him to, in his view, back out of his national letter of intent. He was granted that release. He went to Arizona State. He did not start as a true freshman. He was not going to win the job. And so then he, going into his second year, transferred to Georgia. And then over at Georgia decided, no, I'm not going to play here either because they've got Gunnar Stockton and some other candidates. He's in the transfer portal. That is his career trajectory. It is the poster child for why the NCAA's rollout of the name, image, and likeness, whether you approve of players having NIL earning potential or not, it was messy. He is the picture perfect example of why this went wrong and you allowed too many people with poor motivations to get involved in college athletics. And there are already plenty, but it opened the door for even more. So it's just one example of several that are out there with regards to NIL payments that weren't made. But the reason I bring him up on today's show is he's in the transfer portal. He still has the same physical gifts. He hasn't suffered major injuries or anything like that. He could still develop into a college quarterback, as crazy as that sounds. But reportedly, one of the schools he's considering is Tulane. Now, if you think everything I have told you in this segment so far is crazy, and boy, that's a weird offseason football story, allow me to introduce the story of TJ Finley, who has been to, I think, every single conference in college football in his time, maybe even every school at some point or another. He's been at Texas State, LSU, Auburn. I think there was a Western Kentucky in there. Anyway, he came into Tulane this offseason, ever the journeyman that he is. The plan, it seems, is he's going to be Tulane's starting quarterback. This is a program that beat USC in the Cotton Bowl several years ago and enters every year, even when they did the handoff from Willie Fritz to John Sumrall at the head coaching position. The expectation was still, hey, you should be able to win games. Hey, you should be a really good program. And indeed, that's what they've been because John Sumrall, it turns out, really good coach. Remember that name? He's going to be a Power 4 head coach one day. It's a matter of if, or it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But will it be after this year? I don't know. That depends on how a number of things go down. Because TJ Finley was arrested and charged in connection to an alleged car theft, of which his lawyer argues that he was the victim of an online scam and there was a change of a license plate and whatnot. You can go read about it. There are news reports down there in the New Orleans area. So I see this and go, wait a minute. That interest in Jaden Rashada, are you telling me that could be for a starting quarterback spot? Maybe not. Maybe not, because their battle last year that Darian Mensah ended up winning, remember that's Duke's quarterback now who's getting about $4 million a year to be the Blue Devils signal caller. He is over there. That creates a void, but he emerged amidst a couple of other guys, someone who was a little more veteran, Ty Thompson, another former 5-star recruit who is, by the way, since converted to tight end. This is all just college football, man. What are you going to do? How could you not love it or at least be interested by it? So they are reportedly one of the teams considering bringing in Jaden Rashada. And it could be on an emergency basis. I tell you what, my head will physically, all right, metaphorically, explode if somehow next year Jaden Rashada throws a touchdown to tight end Ty Thompson. That's apparently possible. Now, Rashada's looking at other places as well. Western Kentucky and UConn. Now, the interesting thing about those two schools is not Western Kentucky. Apologies to the Hilltoppers. They have great uniforms and a great mascot over there in Conference USA. UConn could be a backdoor way for Jaden Rashada to get his way back into the Power 4. It really could. It really could. You may be wondering and asking yourself, Spencer, how on earth is that possible? Well, UConn's head coach is Jim Mora Jr. He has turned around a program that, as you may know, is known for basketball. not football. They are an FBS independent, and they could be a Big 12 team one day. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think that's on the horizon. But Jim Mora wanting to reascend, he was once the head coach at UCLA. His desire to ascend back to the Power 4 ranks, entirely feasible. If he were to bring in Jaden Rashada and go out and have another good season, UConn won 8-9 games last year. If Mora then were to become a highly sought after veteran coaching candidate, which he's popped up on more than a couple of coaching circle lists over the last couple of years, if he pops up and ends up finding a job there, then guess what? Maybe he takes Jaden Rashada with him, who I believe has could have up to 4 years of eligibility left. He could be playing quarterback by the time he's 26. He was a class of 2023 recruit, but he played in 3 games at Arizona State. So this is why this is so fascinating to me. That Tulane is looking at, this is one of the highest high-end G5 football brands in America. Year in and year out, you will see them get tossed around as a G5 playoff contender. I don't expect that to go away. They continue to make good hires. They've started to invest more in their athletics department and in their football program. The results have seen that. They have benefited from that. And so if they were to go out and get Rashada because Finley, who was suspended indefinitely until the situation works itself out, isn't able to play, that would be one of the most entertaining storylines. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a college football sicko who has followed this kid since I first interviewed him in Vegas many, many years ago, back in 2023 at an OT7 tournament, and have just tracked his career everywhere that it has gone. If he winds up starting at Tulane, that's an outside possibility. He could be a depth piece. It could be a long-term play for Tulane. But if he winds up playing there and starting at quarterback, I'm telling you, my interest in that would be through the roof. I mean, through the roof. But if you were Tulane looking around at your transfer portal options, would that be the best one you could find? Maybe. We'll see what the quarterback market is like in the spring window. It tends to not be super abundant. Other positions, sure. Quarterback? Not as much. Rashada in his career has played 3 games. He's only won 1 of them. I was actually on the visiting radio call for that game that he has logged down as a victory. The other 2 games that he's played in, he lost. But in those 3 games that he played for Arizona State, 54% completion, 485 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, and a passer rating of 112.1. What does that tell us about him? Not a whole heck of a lot. There isn't a huge sample size out there. So the upside, if you were to look at his recruiting profile, and if you'd watched him throw the ball in high school, you knew he was one of the most talented arms coming out of the class of 2023. Top 5-10 quarterback, depending on where you look. That talent is still in there. The physical gifts and abilities are still there. But if ever there was a guy who needs a veteran coach, I think UConn would be a great place for him, because you'd be out of the limelight a little bit. You'd have a veteran coach who could just settle things down and give you some stability, at least for a year. That's what he would need. But this continues to be one of the wildest stories in college football in the last couple of years that doesn't go away, because I admire that he still even wants to play college football. I think a lot of people at this point would say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too much of a headache. No, he clearly loves football that much. So I give him props, and I tell you what, I'm rooting for him to find a place and thrive. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.